Welcome to Salcedo Paranormal. It is Sunday, February 5th, 2023, and today I'm reviewing 6 stories from H.P. Lovecraft, the complete fiction. As always, you can find all of the shows, along with links to social media and other ways to contact me, at the podcast page, and that is salcedoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions or topic suggestions or stories of paranormal experiences, whether they're your own or from others that you trust. Happy to either read them or have you join me on the show to talk about them. So, doing this show to somewhat make up for missing 2 shows this week, and so that's why I'm doing this extra Lovecraft show. And looks like maybe 2 more episodes of this, and then I'll be done reviewing the stories, and then I'll do 1 more episode after that, just about my thoughts on all of these stories together, and on Lovecraft himself, and then I'll move on to something else. So that's the plan right now. Of course, the next one of these will be on Thursday, and then 2 weeks from that point after that, because on the morning of the 16th, night of the 15th, I'll be doing a roundtable episode. There will not be a stream that day, but there will be an episode that will come out and on the morning of the 16th. And so yeah, that's the plan for the next couple of weeks here. Just the usual true paranormal stories from the web and paranormal news shows, and then some more Lovecraft, and then that roundtable show. So thank you all for being here and listening, whether you're listening live or you listen to the podcast or YouTube feeds. And with that, I think I can get to the stories here. So this first one is a little bit longer. It has chapters. I don't think the summary I have here divides it up in chapters, but basically does talk about the story. So the story starts off, the narrator is Daniel Upton. Explains that he has killed his best friend, Edward Derby, but that he hopes that people will understand why he did it, and that he is not a murderer. So already, of course, Lovecraft horror story here. He starts out by talking about Derby's life and career. Derby had been interested in the occult and paranormal basically from a young age, which is how the two got connected as friends. And they would discuss the paranormal and the occult whenever they could. So apparently, one important factor in the story is that whenever Derby would come by to see Upton, he would use a particular pattern of knocking on the door. It would be three strokes, a pause, and then 2 additional strokes on the knocker. So basically 5, 3, and 2. And so it says that Upton always was able to know it was Derby because of this. So let's see here. At one point, Derby went to let's see here. Oh, I'm sorry. So eventually, Derby's mother passed. And it took him a long time to recover from that, obviously. And then he's around the same time he was going to college. And around this time, he met someone at this college. I'm not sure how you say the name here. Azenith. Let me see here. Azenith Waite, who was a classmate, and of course the college they went to was Miskatonic University. a place that pops up a lot in Lovecraft stories. So this couple was soon got married, and of course the part of what drew them together was again the occult. So the excuse me, the couple moves into the house where his let me see here. Okay, so it looks like at one point Derby moves into a house um and not long after being in college. Um, but at one point, there was people started to notice that Derby started to change. Sometimes he would drive off by himself, even though he'd never been taught to drive. And then once in a while, he'll be driven back by a chauffeur or mechanic. So basically, odd behaviors. And Derby tells Upton that um, Azenith is strange. Tells stories about her, and at one point he shows up at Upton's house in a panic and says he will never let her do a certain thing to him again, but he doesn't say what it is. But Derby does try to hint at what he believes happens, which is that Azenith's father may not actually be dead. And so, but then he eventually, before he can go on, he stops as if he can't go on any further about this. So later on, Upton is called to pick up Derby, who has been found in another town, basically rambling incoherently, it says here. On the trip back, Derby talks about Azenith using his body, basically, and he's pretty sure that it's actually not even her, but it's actually her father in her own body. He thinks that the father actually switched consciousness with his daughter. So so he tells Upton that Azenith wrote down a note that was just like her father's manuscripts, basically just identical to his writing. And after finishing this, what he's telling Upton, he has a seizure, but then rapidly changes personality, and then tells Upton to ignore what Derby had just said. And Upton notices that Derby's eye colors, I think it's colors, but maybe not. Just the look in the eyes has changed. So, getting there here. I know this is a bit long, but so there's some time that passes, a few months, and Derby shows up at Upton's door and says he's found a way to keep Azenith away and to stop her from using his body. And basically that implies some kind of spell or ritual. And Derby eventually does move back to his own home, and but he still seems reluctant to leave the house where he and his wife at that point are living at. So and then of course Derby goes away, and then comes back again at one point, and starts talking about the wife and father-in-law and how they're basically Derby can still feel this presence, whether it's the daughter or the father, trying to get a hold of his mind. So Upton is convinced now that Derby is basically needs help and of a psychological or psychiatric kind here, and has Derby taken to a sanitarium in Arkham. And so at one point, Derby's personality changes again there, and it appears that he is safe to be let go. But Upton can see that it's not actually Derby. It's not actually his regular personality, but it's the one that took over while they were both in the car a while back. So, so at one point, after hearing this, after getting back home, Upton gets a knock at his door, and it's the same knock as Derby would use. And so he gets to the door and opens it and finds this almost a shell of a person. It says it's basically short, humped messenger that is wearing Derby's clothes, and he's carrying a letter from Derby. So Upton reads the letter and finds out that's from Derby, and turns out Derby has killed Asenath and buried her body in their cellar. But basically, he figures out it was too late, and that her or her father's spirit are still around. They've detached from that body, and they've basically taken control of Derby while in the sanitarium, which means that the thing on the doorstep is actually Derby inhabiting Asenath's body, which is passed away, which is dead. And this letter from Derby, he asks Upton to go to the sanitarium to kill Derby, who has now been permanently possessed by Ephraim, which is the father of Asenath. And so Upton does this, and of course he is captured, and is also afraid of losing or having his soul transferred as well. So that's where the story ends. Quite the story, considering how far back this was, back in the early 20th century there, around there. And so yeah, really well written story, and just great turns in it and everything as well. So definitely recommend reading that one as well, and go from there. So let me see here, just checking on everything. Everything looks okay. So that's the first story, and that's going to be the longest story that I talk about tonight. And so yeah, that's basically the first one. I'll get to the next one in just 1 minute. Just gonna get some water. All right. So the next story is called The Tomb. So this story talks about Jervis Dudley, who is a basically obsessed with daydreaming. Apparently, while he's still a child, he finds a padlocked entrance to a mausoleum that belongs to the Hyde family, Hyde, and it says that there's a mansion nearby. There was a mansion nearby that had burnt down many years before that. Jervis tried to break the padlock, but was unable to do that. And so what he started doing after this was he started sleeping outside of the tomb. So eventually, of course, he does read a lot of ancient writings and everything. And so Dudley decides to wait, that's Jarvis, until he is able to open the tomb. So one night, several years later, Jarvis falls asleep outside this tomb, and he wakes up suddenly in late afternoon. And as he wakes up, he's sure he's seen a light that has been extinguished inside the tomb. So he then goes to his home, and he goes to the attic, and is somehow just compelled to do this, and he finds this basically falling, this chest that is falling apart, and he finds a key inside it, and he knows at this point that this key will let him get into that tomb. So it works, and Jarvis discovers an empty coffin with his name inside of it. He starts to sleep in the empty coffin each night. But then people outside who are starting to watch him now still see him sleeping outside the tomb. So Jarvis also starts having this fear of thunder and fire, which is, of course, is what burnt down the mansion belonging to the family that the tomb belongs to. And so at one point, Jarvis goes out to the tomb at night, even though there's a storm going on around him, and he sees the Hyde Mansion returned basically to the way it was, and there's a party in there. So he ends up joining them, and he starts. Excuse me. He joins this party, and during the party, though, lightning strikes the mansion, and of course it burns down. And Jarvis loses consciousness, and he believes that as he does this, he's being burnt to death by the lightning and the fire. But when he wakes up, he finds himself being held by two men with his father nearby. And there's a small antique box discovered in this tomb, which has also been destroyed, basically, by the storm. And there is this box inside this tomb that inside that box there's a porcelain miniature of a man who appears to look just like Jarvis. And of course the name inside or the initials inside this or on this miniature are JH, so Jarvis Hyde. And it seems that Jarvis was the reincarnation of Jarvis Hyde, who came back to be laid to rest with his ancestors in the family tomb, as he was not when his ashes blew away in all directions at the fire. So Jarvis starts telling people that he has been sleeping inside the tomb, even though people have been watching him, and his father tells him that they've always seen him sleeping outside the tomb. So Jarvis is, of course, taken to an asylum, and because everyone assumes that his story is all just made up. But at one point, one of the family servants that is still faithful to Jarvis, basically, he breaks the. Let's see here. I lost my spot. So Jarvis asks the servant, Hiram, to break into the tomb and and then finds that there is indeed a coffin with a plate with Jarvis with that name on it. And then the one that's alive states that he has been promised to be buried in that coffin when he dies. So, of course, the one way you could look at this is just someone's imagination, but then how do you explain the key? Of course, after he wakes up, he can't find the key. So it's a story about questioning really whether what you want to believe. If he did really go through all that, I almost wonder too if it's like a time, some kind of a, I don't know, alternate parallel universe sort of thing, or hard to say with that. Like I said, the easy answer is just that he was imagining everything, but I don't think everything is always that easy. So that's the end of that story, and move on to the next one here in a minute. So let's see here. All right. This next one is called the Transition of Juan Romero, and so this story it talks about a mine that uncovers a very deep, basically a very deep pit, and the night after this pit is discovered, the narrator and one of the mine's workers, who is that his name is Juan Romero, decide to go into the mine at night, and they're basically being drawn against their will by a mysterious sound coming from the ground. Romero gets to the abyss first and falls into it. And the narrator, who's unnamed, looks over the edge and sees something. But of course, and as happens in a lot of these stories, will not say what he saw and loses consciousness. The next morning, the narrator and Romero are both found in their bunks. But and the other workers there say that neither of them ever actually left their cabin that night. And the chasm the pit has also vanished as well. But the thing is, Romero is still dead. He's found in his bed, the same as the narrator is, the next day. So that's a short one, but and it's a good one, and an interesting one in a way. Makes you wonder, were these two invisible when they went out somehow? We know that the pit was discovered by the people at the mine. But then there's no talk about what they thought, of course, after it was gone. So, neat story as well. Just another good short one there. Let's see here. Looking at this, I have 3 more to go. Thank you all again for listening to all this. Doing these reviews is always fun, but somewhat hard in a way, to cover all these stories and get all the details that I can from them. So the next story is called The Tree. And this is probably one of my recent favorites in a way. So this story talks about a mountain in Arcadia where there is this olive grove that is growing around a marble tomb and the ruin of an old house, old villa. And so this one gigantic tree that's there, which is surrounding this tomb, has taken the shape of a distorted human. But of course it's a giant tree, and the roots of the tree have gone into the blocks of the tomb. And so the narrator, who I don't believe was named in this one either, explains that the beekeeper that lived next door to him told him a story about the tree. So at one point in the past, there were these two famous sculptors, Kalos and Musides. I'm not sure if I'm saying this right. We'll just call them K and M. So K and M lived in this villa, which was huge and basically very fancy. And they were both said to be equally as good at what they did. There was not one of them that was better than the other. And so they were devoted friends, but different in their personalities. M enjoyed being out with friends at night, basically going to parties and everything, while K preferred the quiet of the olive grove. That is where he apparently got his inspiration for what he would sculpt. So one day, people from basically emissaries from a someone known as the Tyrant of Syracuse came by to ask the sculptors to create a statue of this. I'm not sure how you say this. Tyche. So I'm guessing it's a deity who is basically the translation of the name is Fortune and Fate. And the statue that is says it must be of great size and cutting marksmanship, since it's supposed to be a national treasure once it is done. So it says that the most beautiful statue will be raised in the Tyrant City. So K and M both accept the commission. And secretly, the Tyrant expects them not to basically sorry, I messed up there. The Tyrant figures that this will actually get the two friends to compete. But also cooperate. So which will basically end up making a statue, whether from one or the other, that will be amazing. So both get started on this. M is still social and active out in the parties and everything, but everyone notices a change in his personality. He looks like he's sad, and apparently it's because K is ill, and so K still they're both still working on their own statues. K still accepts visitors, but his visitors always notice that. Let me see here. Did I get that right? Okay, yeah. So K, even though K is sick, he seems serene and does not seem to be worried about being sick. And no doctors are able to help make him better. So eventually, K is about to die, and M is there and weeps and promises to carve a marble tomb, basically a coffin, for K. And K asks that twigs from certain olive trees in the grove be buried near his head. So soon after this, K dies, and M does design this tomb and does include those twigs that M asked for. Wait, no, I'm sorry. M builds the tomb. Sorry about that. And so K is buried with those twigs near his head, the way he wanted. And after this burial, that's when this large tree starts to grow right at the head of this tomb. So 3 years later, M's work on the statue is complete. The tyrant's agents show up again, and then head to town to stay the night. But that evening, there is this windstorm that comes down the mountain, and the next morning, when the tyrant's people show up at the villa again, they find it's destroyed by this giant tree branch that has also crushed M's statue, and M himself is nowhere to be found. And the end of the story says that the let's see here. It says that there's this phrase, of course, that this other narrator uses, which says "Fate will find a way." So the idea is that somehow Kay, for some reason, had the statue destroyed, and along with the house. So really odd there, though, in a way, because you wonder why exactly. But still, it's the idea of a person somehow merging with the ground and then a tree. That's not too uncommon, but it's also pretty amazing that Lovecraft had this idea as far back as he did, in a way. So let me see here. The next story here is called "The Unnamable," and so this one is features a man named Carter, who is a weird fictional writer, who may also be Randolph Carter, who is in many of Lovecraft's stories. So he meets with a close friend, Joel Manton, in a cemetery near an old abandoned house on Meadow Hill in the town of Arkham, Massachusetts, which is a common town in a lot of in some of Lovecraft stories. And the two friends set upon this weathered tomb, and Carter tells Manton a story about an undescribable entity that allegedly haunts the house and surrounding area. And he says that because such a creature can't be perceived by the five senses, there we go. Excuse me, senses. I can talk. It becomes impossible, it says, to describe this creature. And so that's why it is given the name in the story, the Unnamable. So the friend Montan believes that it's not real, and of course, this presence just after this shows up and attacks Carter and Manton, and both men survive, but they wake up in the hospital, and they suffer from various lacerations, and including scarring from a huge horn-shaped object and bruises in the shape of hoofprints on their backs. And so Manton describes this creature that Carter didn't see and says it was everywhere, and it was like a slime, a vapor. Had shapes, but 1,000 shapes, and so basically shape changing. And so yeah, it's just the story that about this creature that Carter tells, thinking it must be real somehow, and Manton doesn't believe it. And then, of course, in the end, they're both attacked by this creature, this Unnamable. So, another short one there. One last story to talk about here today, and that is called The White Ship. So, the story is basically has this this character, Basil Elton, um, has this daydream or fantasy where a bearded man in robes is piloting a mystical ship which appears when the moon is full, and Elton goes to the water near the lighthouse, and somehow joins the man on the ship, and they go and explore these islands that Elton doesn't believe actually exist in the real world, regular world. Um, so, and this appears to be part of this dream realm, and so it's basically this journey of this real person and then this partially imaginary person on this ship, and they they go across this ocean, and just looking here for the end. So the this journey goes on for a while, and they learn of other places where they can go, and Elton urges the captain basically to take them there to these places, and they follow or they go on this journey after basically they want to head to this other place, but the ship eventually finds itself at the edge of the world, which is something that happens in another one of Lovecraft's stories as well. There's an actual drop off in this dream realm, but in this world, which may be that realm in a way, the ship goes over this edge, and basically it falls, and Elton wakes up after this and finds himself on the rocks on the shore next to his lighthouse, and but he still has all these memories of what happened, and he, as he's waking up and he gets up, he sees a shipwreck that is caused by the light in the house having gone out for the first time. And he later finds a bird and a spur of pure white, which is also something that was seen on this voyage, in the wreckage of the ship. And of course, he never sees that white ship again in any of his dreams. So, but yeah, it's a short story, but it's very well written, a lot better than me trying to describe it there. But that's all the stories I had for today. And like I said, there's another, I think, 6 or 8 stories, so I'll get through the rest of them in 2 more of these episodes. And then I'll have one more where I talk about Lovecraft himself, and then we'll move on to something else. So, thank you all for listening, for staying with me for over half an hour. And I'll be back tomorrow with paranormal news on the next episode of Salcedo Paranormal. Take care, everyone.